say the skies of Lebanon are burning, those mighty cedars bleed in the heat. They're showing pictures on the television, women, children dying in the street. And we're still at it in our own place, still trying to reach the future through the past, still trying to carve tomorrow from a tombstone. But hey, don't listen to me, 'cause this wasn't meant to be no sad song. I've heard too much of them before. Right now I only wanna be here with you until the morning dew comes falling. Yeah. I wanna take you to the island, trace your footprints in the sand, and in the evening when the sun goes down, we'll make love to the sound of the ocean. They're raising banners over by the markets, whitewashing slogans on our shipyard walls, witch doctors praying for a mighty showdown. There's no way our holy flag is gonna fall. Up here we sacrifice our children, warn our dreams of yesterday, and teach them dying will lead us into glory. But hey, don't listen to me, this wasn't meant to be no sad song. I've sung too much of them before. Right now I only wanna be here with you until the morning dew comes falling. I wanna take you to the island, trace your footprints in the sand, and in the evening when the sun goes down, we'll make love to the sound of the ocean. I wanna take you to the island, trace your footprints in the sand, and in the evening when the sun goes down, we'll make love to the sound of the ocean. I wanna take you to the island, trace your footprints in the sand, and in the evening when there's no one around, we'll make love to the sound of the ocean. And in the evening when there's no one around, we'll make love to the sound of the ocean.
Well, good evening and welcome here to another Wednesday evening here On a joint platform this evening, we're broadcasting to Restore UK Live on Facebook, Restore UK Live on YouTube, also Forgotten Voices Media on YouTube and on Facebook, and to the British Unionist People's Voice. So from those platforms, what you can do is that you can share this stream. You can share this stream far and wide to people that you might think that may want to actually hear what it is that we have to say. Tonight we have a very special evening this evening. People that are normally on our live chat and they support our platform, and in turn we actually support these people because these people are patriotically proud to be British Unionists living here in Northern Ireland, and their only crime is actually being British. And for being British, you're about to hear a story that would see these people actually made victims in their own land by people that they want to destroy Britishness. They want to destroy Northern Ireland. They want to destroy the United Kingdom. They want to destroy Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom. And as for a shared space or an accommodating space, we could never be sharing with those people or accommodating with those people. You may have seen that video that was just playing there. And, that's the conglomerate link to Gerry Adams and Sinn Féin that sits in our government today. And yet, as you will note from that video, that the guns were on our streets, and there was an actual date given in that video in 2019. And I can say and state quite clearly, the guns were also on our streets actually last year. And, and what sort of circumstances are they whenever we have people that are linked to terrorists sitting in our government here in Northern Ireland and actually dictating that if they don't get their way, well, violence will actually return. So let's remind people what the violence of the past actually brought about and what happened as a result of that violence. And there's no better people to tell you what happened as a result of that violence as the people that will be joining us on the screen very, very shortly. So what I want to do is that because we're doing this show in two halves this evening, we're going to speak for about an hour with reference to this story and the forgotten voices of the past, and how that these people that are victims, how that they will never, ever get any justice for what happened to them, whilst the terrorists, whilst they have immunity from prosecution, and whilst the terrorists, they who must be appeased at all time, whilst they sit in our government destabilising the place on a daily basis. Well, for an ordinary person looking at that, how corrupt is that? So what I want to start to do is I want to start by playing a little video clip of the time. It's a news clip of the time that made Anne and Billy Dickson victims. And and I mentioned Anne first. Even though that Billy was physically hurt in this attack, Anne also is a victim of this terrorism in many more ways than one. And we can hear from Anne's own words why that it is she's a victim. And, I'm going to ask people to listen very carefully, because like many other stories in the history of our troubles, it tells the truth in a way that isn't rewritten. It's the real version of the truth, and it's the truth about what actually happened here in Northern Ireland. So I'm going to cut to playing a little video clip. And before we play this video clip, I would like to ask the live chat if you could share this screen far and wide. If you're new to our channel, if you give us a like, if you give us a love, if you give us a share, if you would also tag friends and family into the live chat. And that's the mechanism by which others can actually join this platform to hear stories like Billy Dickson and Anne Dickson. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a short video clip. And whenever I come in, we're going to have Billy and Anne on our screen. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask them to introduce themselves. And then we'll get on with talking about what was it that made Anne and Billy Dickson victims, and who was it that actually made Anne and Billy Dickson, and why was it? Why was there, were they put under threat? Well, you'll hear that story as this screen actually goes on. So without any further ado, over to the video chat, or over to the little video, and then whenever we come back off the back of this here, we'll have Anne and Billy on our screen.
This report by James Robbins.
The whole terrace of houses where Councillor Dickson lives was caught up in the attack. The terrorists shot him several times, then left a bomb outside the councillor's home as they fled. They were clearly determined to murder him. They brought with them a sledgehammer to smash down the front door, terrifying Mr. Dickson's wife Anne, who ran out to try to save her husband.
I heard the gate opening and I got up and I said, Billy, is at the gate? And I think he was making his way towards the vestibule door when the front door was bashed in, and the vestibule door was smashed in and the shots just rang out. And then I just shouted, Billy, you're shot. And he says, I'm not. He'd sort of pushed me back into the living room. And then he pushed me into the working kitchen in himself. And he was leaning up against the door. I could see his back and the blood was coming out of it.
The DUP councillor, who's 35, is still critically ill with several bullet wounds. An outspoken critic of Republican terrorism, he intended standing in next month's election to the new Northern Ireland Assembly established by Secretary of State James Pryor. This was the third serious attack on Belfast City councillors in the past 2 years. A fellow unionist is confined to a wheelchair. Last year, a prominent Republican was shot and killed. There's little doubt this attack was designed to interfere with the democratic process, to fight with the bullet rather than through the ballot box.
Okay, so now that we're back, now that you've seen that little clip, now that you've seen the thrust of what happened to Anne and Billy on that day in 1982, Billy will correct me if I'm wrong. Now that you've seen that, what we're going to do is that we're going to go over to Billy. And this tonight, this evening, it isn't about Restore UK, or it isn't about Forgotten Voices Media, or it isn't about the British Unionist People's Voice. It's about Anne and Billy Dickson, who are going to tell us about the time that they were made victims in the early 1980s and the reasons for that, and how that life has actually progressed since that day. And one other very important question: what is it that has given Billy and Anne the determination to continue to fight tirelessly for British unionism in a way that patriotically proud people from the Donegall Road, from the Sandy Row area, in a way that each and every person should actually be fighting? So we've got to take their hats off to these people. So Anne and Billy, welcome to our screen. And Billy, over to you. Now, I'm just going to say, I'm going to, each time that I open up the chat here, I'm going to mute myself. So there might be a little delay between us speaking, but that's just for the live chat so that they understand, and that stops any interference, and that gets the message across in a way that there's no interference on our screen. So over to you, Billy. If you'd just like to introduce yourself and talk about look, I'm going to leave it to you, Billy. You're a very well capable person of telling a story or two.
Well, John, you hear me, John? Right. Well, first of all, could I just thank you for having us on this evening. I'm Billy Dickson, as you know, and presently chairman of the Blackstaff Residents Association, which really is the Donegall Road area, Sandy Row area. And behind me is my wife Anne, and perhaps maybe as the interview goes on, maybe she can take over this seat so you can hear her better, but I don't think you'll have a problem hearing her. But I think the first thing I have to say, John, there's a lot of people on the Donegall Road who haven't been as fortunate as I have been now. It's degrees, I know, and I can assure you that what I had to go through and what my wife had to go through, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. However, there are others on the Donegall Road, Sandy Row, who can't talk to their loved ones because their loved ones are dead. Because either the IRA or the INLA or some other organisation came in and took their lives away. And so if any of the residents of the area, in fact, residents anywhere, people anywhere who are suffering tonight because they don't have their daddy, they don't have their mama, don't have their brother, don't have their sister. My heart goes out to you. But I've been asked by John to give a wee bit of account of what happened to us, I think 39 years ago, coming this September. And the way the events turned out, if it it could have been another story, a more tragic story, and I'll explain that to you now. At least 2 gunmen came along from the INLA. The plan was to get into my house, our house, to kill both my wife and myself, and then to leave a bomb, which was disguised as a radio, to leave it in the living room. Then the police would come out, the security forces would come out to investigate the killings of my wife and myself. They probably would not suspect this radio, like a transistor radio. Wouldn't suspect it sitting there, or maybe in the mount beside some shelf in the living room. And while they would be carrying out their investigation, this bomb would go off with 6-inch nails, and you can imagine that small. So our living room wasn't a very big living room, I can assure you. And you can imagine the bomb going off in that living room with police in it. They would have been killed. I don't know how many police would have been there, but they would have been killed. So it would have been away from myself and members of the security forces. Now, what happened to stop that? What happened? Well, I've always been determined that if a gunman pointed a gun at me, I wouldn't stand by and just wait for the shots. I would do something. Either I would try to run away or I would go for the gunman. And I've always had that in my mind. That night was council meeting, and I was extremely tired. There's been a lot of business, a lot of council business. And you can just imagine the long evening discussing the various council business issues that had to be discussed. And of course, it would have been a long day as well. And a lot of the councillors and all have to go do this for their constituents. A lot of the hard work, they don't realise just how much hard work goes into it. But I was really tired. And I came home and I lay on the settee, exhausted, I'm being honest about it. Suddenly, now, if the gunman had came at that particular time, I can tell you I would have been shot dead, and my wife would have been shot dead. But in the providence of God, Councillor Smith, Eric Smith, colleague of mine, a Democratic Unionist Party colleague of mine from Belfast City Council, decided at that moment to phone me. It was obviously about council business, and he phoned me. And I was too tired. I couldn't really get up off the settee, and I was going to ask the wife to go, but I didn't. I got up. I literally crawled to the phone, and I got up to the phone. And as I was speaking to Eric, just as I started to speak to Eric, I heard this huge bang on my door. And I just wondered what this was. Then, in the darkness, I could hear the shots ring out. And, you know, in a situation like that in the darkness, you react the only way you can act. So there was a vestibule door. You may have seen it in that BBC, it was a BBC programme. As a vestibule door, and as the shots were kept firing, I slammed the vestibule door in the faces of the 2 gunmen, and I couldn't be sure at that time how many there were. I slammed it in their faces, And then I put my two hands through the glass, which, this is the way I remember it happening. And by the way, even after this, I was telling the police all the details. The police said certain things couldn't have been right because of forensics. And it just actually demonstrated why these soldiers, they're asked to make a count of things happened 30 odd, 40 years ago. And I was given an account of something that happened very, very near to when it did happen, and I still wasn't getting it clear in my head. But in my panic, I pushed my hands through the glass as if to throw the glass at them. Pushed my hands right through, and then the firing stopped. But I had been hit, not twice as the reporter said, but I'd been hit once. The revolver, the pistol, there was the full magazine was emptied. I think it was 6 shots, as far as I know, 6 shots. All missing me at point blank range. All missing me at point blank range. But one hit me. Then, when the shooting stopped, I went back and told Anne to get into the kitchen. And she got into the kitchen and she said something like, "You're shot, Billy." And I said, "I'm not." I didn't want to panic her, but she obviously seen the blood on my back. And I stood there with my hands ready for them to come in again, thinking they were going to come in again. But there was silence. Silence. Now, Bumper Graham, I'm leaving maybe come a couple of things out, just for the sake of time. But Bumper Graham, a neighbour from across the way, I owe my life to him because Bumper got me into his car. He didn't worry about, there'd be blood on my nice car seat or anything like that. Bumper got me into his car. And if Bumper's there tonight, he's listening tonight, he's still no longer living. Bumper, I'm saying it again to you. Big thank you. Really thank you. Well, Bumper, he drove off out of our street. I don't know how fast he was going, but I know at one point I thought he went over in 2 wheels. That's how quickly he was going. He went so quick that the police actually thought he was he was the terrorist at one stage. But he got me to the hospital as quickly as he could. And when I got into the hospital, I was on the operating table. And another thing in the providence of God, the surgeon who operated on me, I think he had been from Chicago. And he had been dealing with gunshot wounds on a daily basis. And, it was old hat to him. I couldn't have had a more excellent surgeon than himself because he was so experienced. And he literally opened me up. I could hear everything. Listen, John, I don't know how to explain this, but I couldn't breathe. I was drowning. I felt, I couldn't breathe. And this went on and on. I couldn't breathe. I don't know where the oxygen it was obviously the machines. I wasn't put over. It must have been, local anesthetic or whatever they call it, but they opened me right up and I could hear everything they said about drains here and drains there. And they poked one right into my side, some kind of thing. And John, I'm putting my hand on it now. I can still feel that now, the pain. I can still feel it. I can still feel it, And, and if I go anywhere for examination, they're always asking me, had you a heart operation or something, see the big scar? Well, I don't want to tell them I've been shot and all that sort of thing. But thank God I had a good surgeon. And Dr. Paisley came in and he said a prayer, and you know, and then I found out afterwards, and I think maybe I'll leave the next wee bit for my wife, but I found out afterwards that the message was getting across right across the British Isles, and we had built up a good friendship with friends from Wales, Scotland, and England, and especially from Chelmsford and Essex, Mr. Stephen Holmes, people from Watersham. And when they heard it, the first thing they done, John, they got on their knees and they prayed. They prayed. Now, when I was in hospital, when I was recovering, I could look out of the window and I could see in the distance the spire, if you call it the spire, of a St. Simon's Church. And you know, the tremendous feeling I had of you know, how valuable life was, how good it was to be alive. You know, it's so precious to be alive. Now, you know, why did I survive? I mean, I heard about a policeman who was not far from me, really, next ward, I think, who had got a graze. That's all I would call it, a graze shot. What was a graze? And he died. You know, he died. Must be shock or something. And you know, and I've other two policemen in Donegall Pass who were killed when I was serving in the police, who were killed then. Two policemen killed. You know, and I can go on and on. Has two relatives, if you might want to mention them to you, who were killed and in horrible circumstances. But yet, God has seen fit to keep me alive. And you know, and probably that's one of the reasons why I keep up things. I don't give up, because God has given me life. I could be up in the rose lawn or whatever, and all you would know about me, I was up there with my name on a gravestone, but I'm alive. And I believe God has saved me for a purpose. Now, John, as I say, I was in hospital, but my wife had to deal with the aftermath. You know, she was in the house. The house had been, although the bomb that went off outside, that's what happened. Whenever these gunmen, whenever I prevented them getting in, they must have panicked, because they only give themselves so many minutes, maybe even seconds, to do bang bang your job, whatever it is, and get away quickly. But because of being held up at the door, they left the sledgehammer in the garden, did they? I think they did, and they left the radio in the garden, right? And away they went. Now, the fact is, the radio was in the garden, and I think I'll maybe let on say the rest of it, because I was away, and on was left with that situation. So, all right with you, John, if on takes over for a minute or two?
Absolutely, Billy. Billy, what I would just like to ask you, and this is for the purpose of explanation for the live chat. I mean, we sat and we listened to you there, and you know, there's really one question in my mind, and you know, and this would really need to come from you. But I mean, could you just tell the live chat why that you should be a victim? Why did they try to make you a victim? Just explain, because there's people from the Irish Republic that are here this evening. There's a man on the screen that I know that he's from the Irish Republic. Also, there's people from England, maybe Scotland or Wales. So if you could just explain what made you a victim, Billy? What made them target you? If you just explain that for us.
Well, somebody did say, I mean, I can't really answer that, but one person said one time that what the terrorists do is they pick out leading personalities in the community, people who work for the community, maybe a leading farmer or businessman or whatever, somebody prominent in the community, and take them out, and that helps to destabilize the community, right? And then creates anger, have to do something. And I've been in that situation myself where bomb went off in Sandy Row, and I remember turning around to some church people beside me, and I said, oh, I'll just mention the first name of this man, John. I just said, John, give me yourself. John, I said, I feel very angry. I really feel very angry. When the Reverend Bradford was murdered, I don't know how I was able to contain myself because there was so much anger. I knew the man personally. He came and he spoke to the church and all, and I knew him so well. And I said, how could they kill a man like that who did so much good, even for the Chinese community? He did so much good. Why would they want to kill a man like that? Well, they did. Now, maybe that's the main reason they shot me. Maybe it was just simply it was a member of the Democratic Unionist Party at the time, or there could be other reasons. For example, I knew that the Reverend Bradford was very, very interested in, you could say, mismanagement at the Royal Victoria Hospital. And I remember being a member of the Eastern Health and Social Services Board, and actually getting up because I was concerned that there was a very high percentage, in my view at that time, of Roman Catholics in the hospital and very few Protestants in the different departments. I didn't know whether I was right or whether I was wrong. So the solution would be to have a questionnaire, some kind of a questionnaire, to establish the percentage of Protestants and the percentage of Roman Catholics working in the hospital. And this is before legislation came out about having to declare all this fair employment thing. This is way before all that. That didn't exist at all. And all these medical people got up at the board meeting and they didn't want anything to do with a head count. They didn't want to know who was Protestant and who was Roman Catholic. And I can understand that point of view. But I was saying that as far as I'm concerned, there was very few Protestants in many of the departments, and that has to be looked into. And the only way to look into that is to find out in some way, how many Protestants there were and how many Roman Catholics and how many were non-descriptive. That's all I was asking for. And there's the public allowed into these board meetings, and they were all sitting in the back from trade unions and all the rest of it. And I don't know, but I've just got this wee bit of. My wife has other views, and she's got other hunches, but I've got this sort of feeling that helped to target me. That I was like the Reverend Bradford, talking up about the Royal Victoria Hospital and the issues there, and I was basically doing the same. I'm not saying that's the main reason the Reverend Bradford was murdered, but I just have this feeling that could be possibly the reason or one of the reasons. But come back to the point I made, and it was made by this particular person, that the IRA, the terrorists, target prominent people within a community, and they just go after them. Doesn't matter who they are. Doesn't even have to be a member of any political party. Just could be a headmaster of a school. Could be anyone for that matter. So I believe if I let Anne have a wee say, she always has the last word anyway, John.
No problem. Billy, just one thing before we move over to Anne. I mean, you mentioned there that that Eric Smith had phoned you, and
Yes.
just to explain to you is that Eric Smith was my neighbour. Whenever I was a young man, and Eric Smith done a lot of good work in the community, and that's the type of work that I guess is slimming down nowadays. Where Eric Smith would have come round the doors and took all the kids off to gospel meetings way back then, and introduced people to the gospel. So there you go. I mean, that's a testament to the man that you were speaking about. That's Eric Smith, and I know Eric and his family very, very well. And one other thing before that, this man John here that's on the screen, I mean, he's requesting, Billy, that he would love to meet you at some time. And let me explain to you who John is. John's a man that comes from Dublin in the Republic of Ireland. And, you know, myself and John often have conversations about how that it is that the likes of John and people from the south have more in common with us, Billy, than they do with a lot of their own people because of the way that their society has actually become. So again, these are the type of people that are visiting our screens on regular basis. And, you know, those are the type of people that I would align with every single day of the week and twice on a Sunday, I have to say that. So no doubt, Billy, you're going to meet John at some stage, because John's a very good man, so he is to talk to. So, Billy, over to you, and you can...
I say about Eric Smith. When we stood for election in St. George's, Sandy Row area, I said, you know, because I knew the dirty tricks that was played on different people, you know, during the elections. And I says to Eric, you trust me. And I says, if you do the election the way I suggest, I says, we'll go, everything will be 50-50. Part of the area, you'll be Eric Smith #1, and the other part of the area will be Dickson #1. And we'll stay together. We'll not be going out independently. We'll go in, we'll be together all the time. And we had a wee band out, and the wee band was going around Sandy Row and all. And when we're in his area, for #1 Eric Smith, I had the placard up, Smith 1, Dickson 2, and into my area, Dickson 1, Smith 2. And you know, he did trust me. We trusted each other, because in politics, you know, some people are tempted to do things that they shouldn't do. You know, that's the way politics is.
Yeah.
But we trusted each other, and as a result, the two of us were elected to Belfast City Council. So, if you work together, if you trust each other and work together, that's a secret. So, and I think the other thing too, I know, John, you're trying to, you know, bring all shades of unionism together. You know, I understand that and I appreciate that. I mean, but from our point of view, from those who would profess Christianity, we believe in a living God, and we believe God overrules, and that's why I believe God. Like, people will come round and, you know, people get very involved with things, and I guess a wee bit muddied and say, but why was my husband killed? And you gotta what? I can't answer all that, John. I can never answer all that. And I can feel for them, and I can understand. That's what I said. That's why I was very careful at the very start to mention those people, because my heart goes out to them. And I have no answer. I have no answer. I wish I had the answer, but God has the answers. I don't have the answers. So I'm going to hand over anyway to Anne, have her say. Go ahead.
And before Anne starts speaking, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the live chat to tag your friends. I mean, give us a like, give us a share, give us a love. There's not enough loves on the screen this evening. And we're going to begin over to Anne just in a moment, and Anne can tell us, pick up where Billy left off. So Anne, just for the latecomers to the screen, and again, before you start speaking, what I want to do is for the latecomers, I want to play just a little clip which shows people what actually happened to both yourself and Billy on that day. And whenever we come back, Anne, it'll be over to you in exactly the same way as Billy. And Anne, thank you very much for coming to your screen. And one other thing, people, notice that Billy has his little badge on there, and Anne has her little badge. Sorry, Anne, I didn't see yours too. Yeah, and we'll talk about them badges in the very at the end of the screen. But yeah, here we go, over to the little clip again for the newcomers, just to let you see what happened on the day that Billy and Anne Dickson were made victims of Republican terrorism. And why? All because that they were British, all because that they wanted to stand up for their Britishness, all because that they wanted to question things. And still to this day, it has never, ever put them off. They're still the same people. And that's what a British unionist should be, the people that you see on your screen.
This report by James Robbins.
The whole terrace of houses where Councillor Dickson lives was caught up in the attack. The The terrorists shot him several times, then left a bomb outside the councillor's home as they fled. They were clearly determined to murder him. They brought with them a sledgehammer to smash down the front door, terrifying Mr. Dickson's wife Anne, who ran out to try to save her husband.
I heard the gate open and I got up and I said, Billy is at the gate. And I think he was making his way towards the vestibule door when the front door was bashed in and the vestibule door was smashed in and the shots just rang out. And then I just shouted, Billy, you're shot. And he says, I'm not. He'd sort of pushed me back into the living room. And then he pushed me into the working kitchen in himself. And he's leaning up against the door. I could see his back as the blood was coming out of it.
The DUP councillor, who's 35, is still critically ill with several bullet wounds. An outspoken critic of Republican terrorism, he intended standing in next month's election to the new Northern Ireland Assembly established by Secretary of State James Pryor. This was the third serious attack on Belfast City councillors in the past 2 years. A fellow unionist is confined to a wheelchair. Last year, a prominent Republican was shot and killed. There's little doubt this attack was designed to interfere with the democratic process, to fight with the bullet rather than through the ballot box.
So, Anne, just to lead you in and to recap, I mean, Billy at this stage, he was in the hallway answering the phone, the door busted open. Billy basically fought off the gunmen. He was shot once. And Anne, if you could just pick up and tell us the story as you found it after those events.
With me, and he was lying up against the door and the blood was spurting out of his back. And he didn't realise he had been shot, you see. And as he said, he waited till he thought it was all quiet. Then he opened the door and he slumped down on the floor. And all this time, Eric was on the other end of the phone. And I couldn't find the phone. I couldn't find the receiver. And eventually I found it. It was on the other side of the door. So Billy must have still had the phone in his hand when he put his two hands through, which was thick patch glass. And he should have been killed by doing that because he should have cut his arteries. So I got Eric on the phone and told them and him and another councillor, Joe Coggle, get the right down to the hospital. When I got to the hospital, I said I was going to the hospital, but the neighbours tried to pacify me and whatnot. But one neighbour, he took me down anyway, and a female neighbour with me. Her and her husband had got an Indian takeaway. She never got it that night at all. But anyway, she came down to the hospital with me, and the doctors wanted me to go and lie down. No, but I wasn't having any of that. I'm not lying down. So eventually they came into the room, they put us all into the room, and they came into the room sometime later, and they gave me a wee brown envelope, and I said, oh, he's died, but it was his watch and his ring. So eventually they brought me round to sit outside the intensive care, and my neighbour with me, and they wheeled him out, and I said, oh look, he's blinking, his eyes were fluttering. I said, he's still alive. So they took a while to set him all up, and when I went in, it was just like 10 green bottles all around the bed, these big glass showers, and I would be prone to faint at things, and I could feel myself sort of going back and forward, and I just said, Lord, please don't let me faint, because I'll smash all these bottles if I fall on top of them. And I never felt that way again the whole time. I came home, and I came home to the devastation of my own home, with no windows, no door. The radiator in the hallway had busted, and it had just got new carpet. It was all saturated. The ceiling, the bomb had wrecked the ceiling as well.
Tell me how the police identified the radio? How they lost you?
Yes, they came to the hospital and asked me, did we have a radio in our garden? And I said no. Well, then they were straight back up to Broadway Parade, and the radio, the bomb had went off. It blew my garden wall down. It blew a hole in the ground. It damaged all our brickwork. So then we had to end up paying ourselves, because the money that the government gave us, the Northern Ireland office, we didn't pay for it. We had to pay for to put cladding on the front of our house because we couldn't get bricks to match. So anyway, the next day, two people arrived at our door, and one of them, it didn't come at the same time. One was Thomas Passmore, the late Thomas Passmore, and he gave us a wee donation from the Orange Order. But when we got back on our feet, without being insulting, we gave the donation back to another charity within the Orange. And the other person that came to our house was Seamus Lynch of the Workers' Party. And Billy is still friends with him to this day. We see him whenever the
we seem to have a problem with the sound here for some reason or other. And it's not that you're muted or anything on. So, right, Anne, if you just talk again there to see, do you? Anne, I think you're muted on the computer and I can't unmute you for some reason or other. Can you unmute your mic, Billy, there with your little button? Ah, that's better. That's better. There was just something hit there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Okay, so back to the stage where Seamus Lynch would have came to the house and Billy was still.
Seamus Lynch came to the house. So as I said, there was other people who should have been at our door and weren't. Actually, I'm being honest about it. Ian Paisley came out that night. Billy didn't want me to say it, but I'm saying it. Ian Paisley came out and seen the neighbours, and the neighbours said, this is when the bombing went off. I think it was the next morning. And the neighbours said, we have to get this cleaned up for Anne coming home. Ian Paisley says, leave that to me. And the people that cleaned my house up for me coming home was my father and a man that worked with him. That's the things that happened to us. But in the hospital, I was going to say something there about the hospital. And my mother, well, whenever I seen that Billy was rallying round, I thought, well, Billy's mummy has to be told. So Eric Smith, who knew Billy's mummy, she went to his wee meetings, he went up to tell her, and Stuart McRae, another councillor, he brought me over to my mum and dad's flat in the Braniel, and I rapped on the window. This is about 4 a.m, like, or 5, and my daddy gets out of bed and comes to the window. Here's me, it's me, trying to be not scaring him. So when I got in, he thought Billy had had an accident, a car accident, like. And I wanted my mummy and daddy to find out before the news came on, for he would have had the news on from the crack of dawn. And I wanted him to know that before it came over the air. So they couldn't get over it. They were gobsmacked, the two of them. So the next day, I got ready. I was in their house with a mint green blouse on me, covered in blood. That's the way I went over. So I had to get home and get cleaned. And that's when I came back and seen the state of my home. And well, the neighbours, they had problems too. Some of their windows were blew out and there's smoke coming down the chimney and all. And all I got was they had to pay the first £100 or something themselves. And then what was left to pay wasn't much. So the Northern Ireland office didn't do right by my neighbours either. Like. But anyway, they wanted to transfer Billy from the city hospital to the Royal because his breathing was so bad. But Billy kept saying no. And they kept asking me to try and persuade him. So eventually we persuaded him because they had said that he would go into a secure wing in the Royal Victoria Hospital. So that was all arranged, and up we went to the Royal Victoria Hospital, and it was a secure wing. You could hardly get into it. So, but this day I was up, and the police called me, and they said, there's a woman coming up that staircase on her own. Can you vouch for her? It turned out to be my cousin's daughter who doesn't get into lifts. So that's how secure it was. And he had a wee room of his own and that. So anyway, when the time came for him to leave the hospital, the Royal was able to help him with his breathing, which was very good because that was his problem, his breathing. When the time came for him to leave the hospital, we had nowhere to go, only our own home, with no ceiling, your windows blew out and all. So my mother and father, we went to their flat in the Braniel, and we stayed in the Braniel flat for 3 weeks. My mum and dad lived in our house. It's just like a builder's yard thing. And I mean, they weren't young children, they weren't teenagers, but they lived in that. And again, there was people said that certain ones should have sent us away on a holiday. But they didn't. But we had a very good friend, actually, he's just died recently, Jackie Butler, a very good Christian man. And he was a plasterer, and he came out and fixed it, the hole in the ceiling, and then replastered the whole ceiling for us. So we had friends, but not. There was friends that we should have had and we didn't have, put it that way. But when the time came for Billy to get out, we're a bit dubious about him coming out, you know, in case the INLA were waiting on him coming out, because you become paranoid. But we needn't have worried about that. When we come out the back door of the city, or the Royal Victoria, people were looking, saying, who's the VIP coming out? Because there was loads of police about, and out walks Billy Dickson and Ann Dickson, and into a police car, and they took us to the Braniel, and they kept an eye on us. And even when we did come back home, they'd have been driving up and down the street, and neighbours would have been reporting it to us. I seen a plainclothes car going down your street. Do you know anything about it? So it was the police. And when he started back to work, they would have followed him to work and all. One day he was going to work, and this motorbike sped by, and he just threw himself up against the wall, because that's the way he was. One day Nelson McCausland had come to see him in our house, and our street wasn't that wide, and the coal lorry came down the street, and the coal man couldn't get past because there was cars parked on both sides. So he rapped our door for the Billy to move the car, and Billy wouldn't go to the door. He says, how do I know he's a coal man? He mightn't be a coal man, he might be a bogus, like he had a coal lorry and all. But he says he might be a bogus. He says, I'm not going to the door. So I don't know how the coal man got down the street. Things like that happened. He ended up, he had to go to Windsor House and get help there. He had a very good doctor, and she referred him to Windsor House, and he got some help there. And when he went back to work, there was a job that they all did, which was called back security. This is the Ulster Museum. But when Billy went in, they didn't allow Billy to do the back security, because you were sitting out on your own in a wee hut, and the boss has said, no, you're not doing that. So they looked after him in that way. But you live with it from day to day. Billy, even yet, if I was vacuuming and I hit the skirting board or something, his nerves are shattered, and then he shatters my nerves, and that's the way we're living. And even yet, he'll say, watch going to the door, like we have a glass door, like you can see from your window who's at your door. But our other house wasn't like that. But he'll say, don't go to the door, don't go to the door. And
you can actually see why on that, you know, that Billy would have been a different man after it, and the same again with yourself. You would have been a different person. And I mean, I just want to ask you a question, Billy. Again, this is before we'll bring you back in again, because Anne's a very interesting lady, and there's more to scratch the surface with. And I mean, I just hear you talking about your Christian faith, and I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to say this to the live chat. You know, I know that there's people that are Christians, that aren't Christians, that believe in Christianity, that don't believe in Christianity, and that's very well, because the cornerstone of those Judeo-Christian values that made Anne and Billy Christians is a thing called free will. And, you know, I'm going to quote a wee bit from the Bible where it says, choose you this day whom you will serve, or don't choose this day to serve. That's completely up to yourself. But I'm always very, very interested in how people would actually get over traumatic experiences, just like what it is that you and Billy went through. And just a question, I mean, at that time, were you a Christian, and did your Christian faith play a big part in getting you over that time, as you've explained with Billy?
We were both Christians, and I was saved when I was 16. I lived at Ardoyne, and I went to Ardglen City Mission, and we had a wonderful missionary, Mr. Forbes, but I wasn't saved then. Well, I think maybe as a child we talked about being saved, but anyway, when I was a teenager and started work, I fell in with these girls. Frances Smith was one of them, and a few other girls from Norwood Street, and I started going to the Emmanuel Mission with them. And it was in the Emmanuel Mission in Sandy Row. It was beside the Achilles Bar in Sandy Row, and sometimes people came to our hall by mistake. They were looking for the Achilles Bar. But anyway, I was saved in that mission hall. And then I was going to the coalmen's meeting, which was over by Donegall Coal Quay, with my friends. And Billy Dickson was walking along. You're going to get a romance here now. Billy Dickson was walking along with this other fella who turned out to be my cousin. And I says, oh, I know him. Well, you know what your mates are like. Oh, she knows him. And I even knew Billy because he was doing groundsman up in my school, up in Everton School. And I said, I know him. He worked in our school. So the next thing, I was meeting him at the CNA on a Sunday night for the open air meeting. And my mother and father would have been strict. I would say my mother was worse than my father. I asked, could I go out with Billy? And I can't tell you what the question my father asked me back, because there's all sorts of people watching us. And I said, yes, he comes from Sandy Row. He says, I don't care where he comes from. But anyway, I started going out with Billy, and I got involved with him in Perimeter Street Methodist Church. He was the leader in charge of the Life Boys, and I helped him out with that. Then one night, Billy said he was going to the Ulster Hall to hear Ian Paisley speaking, and he went, and then he asked me would I go with him. So I said to my daughter, I said, is it all right if I go to the Ulster Hall with Billy to hear Ian Paisley? My daddy's words were, you can go this time, but don't be making a habit of it. But a couple of weeks later, my mum and daddy were sitting there every Sunday. You know what I mean? But anyway, that's just by the way. But I have two relatives that were murdered as well. One was a step cousin. My mum's sister married a man whose wife had died, and the two children. And he was in the army all his life. And he came out of the army and he joined the UDR, and he was a colour sergeant in the UDR, and he had just left at about 6 weeks, and he was working in Toome Street. He called him Nathaniel Cush. They lived up the Crumlin Road at the time. I don't know where his wife lives now, even if she's still alive. Whenever he came out to his car, he was on a split, and when he came out and got into his car, it blew up, and that was the end of him. The other one was my cousin's son-in-law, Colin Abernethy, and he wasn't in any paramilitaries, and neither was the other fellow. He wasn't in the police or the army or anything, but he was in the Ulster clubs, and he was a very good writer, and he was always putting letters in the press. They got on the train, he lived in Lisburn, and they got on the train at Hilden, dressed as postmen, and they shot him dead on the train, and left his wife with a 3.5-year-old son, and she was heavily pregnant with her daughter. So our family has had our share of tragedies at the hands of the INLA and the IRA.
Thank you very much for that. And I'm referring to the words of a poem that was often put out on this platform, and I can't help but wonder why so many people had to die for being British in our own land, murdered by cards by their evil hand. That's the gist of that poem, man.
When Billy was lying on the floor at the city, I actually thought he was dying then. And stranger things come into your head. We had a dog, and I heard him barking in that wee clip from the BBC. And I didn't know who had him for a few days. Somebody must have had him for a few days. But I started to panic. I said, so the dog, like he was lying against the door and the blood spurting out of his back. I says, the dog, where's the dog? So we got him in the kitchen as well, and because there was all broken glass, and he's going to cut his paws. But anyway, we survived that. But as Christians, we had to look to the Lord, and we had, with some good friends, we had a man, Billy Weir. He took over the children's work for us. We were doing children's work, and he ran it for a lot of weeks. And then when Billy was fit enough, he would have come down to the hall and sat, and I would have started muddled through doing the meetings myself. So we had him, we had Jim Robinson. They were good men. They brought Billy up in the city mission, and we had them to rely on. There was others that we could have relied on, but they weren't there for us. So, but Billy's too much of a gentleman to say things like, I'm not as gracious as him.
Yeah, I understand.
Obviously, I could go into every detail from the minute it happened, every detail, but it would take days to go through it all.
Yeah, and just on another note, what I would like to ask you, and this is again for the purpose of the live chat, and let me explain something, is that, given that Billy and Anne had went through what you've seen, if you've been here from the start, I mean, Billy was shot, and Anne was there, and Anne was present, and not only did they try to shoot Billy, but, they would have blown Billy and Anne up if their plan had actually came to fruition, and Billy, but Billy did actually fight them off, and seen them off in a way that they went. But, it hasn't stopped Billy and Anne from doing the things that they do. I mean, recently I got involved with them whenever they're now fighting to save the Boyne Bridge, and they fight tirelessly in that way. And there's another thing that the two of them actually do, and this must be said. but who remembers the flag protests, where a lot of people have actually forgotten about? And Anne, could I just ask you if you could tell the people, I mean, how many years ago did those flag protests start? And you don't have to be exact, and yet you are still there every Saturday, still standing up for the flag of the country, that flag being the Union Jack. Anne, over to you.
Well, we will be our 9 years in December coming. It was 2012, and there was quite a crowd at the time, and sometimes it got a wee bit out of hand. People were very feisty about things and hot-headed, but the numbers dwindled over the years, and I suppose the virus hasn't helped either. So we have about 20, 25 coming, although they're not all back yet because of the COVID. But we've been doing that through thick and thin, snow, hail, sunshine, rain, doesn't matter, we're there. And then, of course, we've had a few members have died as well into the bargain. But we're there, and people say, "Are you still there? You doing that?" Why are they not there? There was somebody on the other night, I think, on your programme, and he was saying about the flag protesters. Well, why doesn't he come down and support us? Why don't all these people get up off their backsides and come down to City Hall? Even though you don't have to be there every week, even once a month. If they love the flag of their country so much, why aren't they down to City Hall? That's where they should be. And in case I forget, going back to Billy down on the floor, I actually thought he was down then. That's what he was saying. "Lord, don't take me away from the children's work." And the Lord didn't take him away from it. But unfortunately now we don't have any children because of the situation. We have no children. So anybody out there has children living in the village area, send them along to us. We're there every Thursday night, 6:30, and every Sunday, 2:30.
Yeah. And just two things is that, I heard you saying, I seen you saying to that guy the other evening when he was talking about the flag protest, and I think you had said, or someone had said, that there's no stickability these days with some people. That was you. Now, I'd just like to read this here from Philip Glenfield. I grew up in the village next street to Billy and Anne, and went to their wee meetings. Two wonderful people, pillars of the community. I remember that terrible night. Even though I was 8 at the time, it was a shocking night. But it says a lot about the two of them. After it happened, they just continued to do, and they still do to this day. So there's a huge endorsement.
They live in the next street to us, and we used to call for them every Sunday for Sunday school. Philip and Matthew's brother. So,
and as I said to you, that's what Eric Smith would have done with me. And my sister's on this chat this evening, and I can see my sister actually saying that, yeah, I remember Eric Smith took me to the hospital when I fell and broke my leg. But I mean, that's the type of people that these people were. And, we're lacking in those type of people today. And, that the tried and tested ways of the past. And some people say that we need to keep moving forward. We need to be progressive. We need to, they're living in the past. Well, that's the past that I would rather be living in. And I can say that without fear of, well, I'm not worried what people say whenever I say that, because that's what I believe, and that's how that I believe things.
People don't know their neighbours nowadays. Yeah. That's part of the problem. You don't know your neighbours.
Absolutely. And I hope that you're willing to come back again, because I know there's other services that we must scratch with you. I would like you to come along and tell us about some of the things that you're involved in, namely the Orange Order and different things that you do within the community. And even here at Restore, part of our platforms is that whenever we're selling the badge, well, Anne was very, very quick to say, "John, if you give me some of those badges, I'll sell them at the flag protest, and I'll sell them at my Orange Lodge for you." And so she has. Great people. And there we go. Everybody show their badges. I can't get mine out. There's Anne's badge, there's Billy's badge, and there's my badge. And there you go. So, people, there you go. I mean, that's the reality. That's Billy and Anne. And Billy, would you just like to now come across and finish off? And thanks very much. Thank you. So, Billy, I mean, there you go. I mean, you're the man that wanted to stand up for the community. You're the man that questions things. You're the man that would actually question about Sorry, I think they've just knocked themselves off again. If they can come back in again, look, I keep talking whilst that they probably come back in again, and I'm going to actually say that if you're listening to us, Billy, or on there, if you can hear me, all you need to do is to go back through the link again and sign yourself back in. I've actually no control over this, and if they don't come in, here's what I'm going to do, people. I'm going to play us just a little song. And then what we'll do is that if Billy and Anne don't come back in again, what we'll do is that we'll move and we'll begin talking about the things that happened here today in terms of, what happened to British unionism today, in terms of the judgment that was delivered with reference to the actual protocol. So what I'm going to do is that we'll just drop that down. I'm going to go over to a little video. And hopefully Billy will be back in here again, and if not, we'll move on. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look for we'll look for another victim story. We'll look for a relevant victim story with reference what it is that the Republican terrorists have done in this country over the years, and what it is that they actually continue to do over the years. So watch this one. This is a man that recently died. He was a high-ranking member of the Republican movement. And just listen to what this man says that they are involved in. I'll play this video and we'll come back off the back of it.
We have taken a lot of big initiatives and a lot of big moves in the last couple of years. We have attacked the Orange State. Whatever we think about policing them, we all think different things. The RUC are destroyed. The Orange Order are in their backs. The dance throws that they have are going year by year by year. The civil service is under assault from us. The southern state is collapsing, it's falling apart.
Okay, people, we don't seem to have Billy back in again, but let's hope that they're watching the rest of the screen. Look, at this point, if you're watching on Forgotten Voices Media, what we would like to do is we would like to ask you to go over to either the British Unionist People's Voice or go over to Restore. That's Restore UK, either on Facebook or on YouTube. So at this point, we're just going to close the Forgotten Voices Media platform. And the reason why that we're doing that is that we keep Forgotten Voices Media for exactly that, for forgotten voices, for telling the victims' stories. And we're going to move on and we're going to talk about other things on Restore. So if you just bear with me for a second, I'm going to remove the Forgotten Voices Media off our... Yep, that's one away. And just bear with me while I remove yet another one. And there's Billy back in again. There's Billy back in again and Anne. So if you just bear with us, Billy and Anne, I'm just removing Forgotten Voices Media from the platform. And sure, you may as well join us to talk about we'll just let you close, Billy. So we will, and then over to you. We'll let you close. So if you just bear with us, Billy and Anne, I'm just removing Forgotten Voices Media from the platform, and sure, you may as well join us to talk about we'll just let you close, Billy, so we will, and then over to you. We'll let you close.
John.
There seems to be a problem. What I'm going to do, people, if you can hear me, I'm going to close the screen down, and I'm going to restart with another screen. We've got technical difficulties, unfortunately. We've got technical difficulties, people. Yeah. I'm going to close down and we're going to come back in again. I have to, unfortunately.